The message arrived at the Galactic Council headquarters on a quiet Tuesday morning. The transmission came from the outer edge of the galaxy, from a place most civilized beings had forgotten existed. Scanner Officer Velthar, a tall blue creature with 4 arms, stared at his screen with growing confusion. "Sir," he called to his supervisor, "we have a problem." The supervisor, a floating jellyfish-like being named Quarth, drifted over to the scanner station. His tentacles moved in patterns that showed he was annoyed. "What now, Velthar?" "Another asteroid collision." "Pirate attack?" "No, sir. It's a first contact situation." Quarth's tentacles stopped moving. First contact situations were rare. Most of the galaxy had been explored and catalogued centuries ago. "Where?" "Grid Section 7 Alpha 23. A small solar system with 9 planets. The 3rd planet from their star shows signs of intelligent life." Quarth examined the data flowing across the screens. "Population?" "Approximately 8 billion individuals, sir." "Technology level?" "Primitive. They have basic spaceflight, nuclear weapons, and simple computer systems. Nothing that would threaten galactic security." Quarth relaxed slightly. "Standard procedure, then. Send the assessment team. If they're peaceful, we invite them to join the council. If they're aggressive, we eliminate the threat." Velthar's skin changed to a worried purple color. "Sir, there's something else. The species calls itself humanity. Our computers ran a preliminary analysis of their behavior patterns, and the war computer issued a recommendation I've never seen before." Quarth moved closer to the screen. "Show me." The display changed to show a simple message in bright red letters. "Avoid direct military engagement at all costs." Quarth stared at the message for a long moment. "That's impossible. The war computer has analyzed thousands of species. It has never issued that recommendation. I ran the analysis 3 times, sir. Same result every time. There must be an error. These humans are primitive. Look at their weapons, crude missiles and explosive devices. Their spaceships barely leave their own solar system. How could they possibly threaten advanced civilizations?" Velthar pulled up more data. "I thought the same thing, sir. But the computer's analysis is based on behavioral patterns, not just technology." Meanwhile, in the distant solar system, Ambassador Taemin stood on the observation deck of humanity's first interstellar vessel. The ship was small and simple compared to the massive vessels that traveled between the stars and other parts of the galaxy. But for humans, it represented the greatest achievement in their history. Captain Sojin joined him at the window. She was a calm woman with steady hands and sharp eyes. "The long-range scanners are picking up movement at the edge of our solar system," she said. "How many ships?" Taemin asked. 3 vessels. They're much larger than ours. Technology appears to be several centuries ahead of anything we have." Taemin nodded slowly. "Are they heading toward Earth?" "Not directly. They're maintaining distance, but they're clearly watching us." Back on Earth, Admiral Kyung-ho paced around the command center of the Space Defense Force. Banks of computers and communication equipment filled the room. Dozens of technicians monitored screens that showed the positions of every human spacecraft in the solar system. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Yuna from her station, "we're receiving a transmission from the unknown vessels." "Put it on the main screen." The image that appeared showed a reptilian creature with scales that shifted between green and gold. When it spoke, its voice was deep and commanding. "Greetings, inhabitants of the 3rd planet. I am Commander Vorthak of the Galactic Council Assessment Team. Your species has reached a level of development that requires evaluation for potential membership in our civilization." Admiral Kyung-ho stepped forward. "This is Admiral Kyung-ho of the Human Space Defense Force. We welcome contact with your civilization. Your response will be noted. We will begin our assessment of your species immediately. Do not interfere with our operations." The transmission ended. Admiral Kyung-ho turned to his staff. "Analysis?" Dr. Hyojin, the chief xenobiologist, spoke first. "They're clearly more advanced than us. Their ship design and technology suggest they've been traveling between stars for a long time." "Threat assessment?" the Admiral asked. "Unknown. They mentioned an assessment for membership in their civilization. That could be good or bad. What's the worst-case scenario?" Dr. Hyojin hesitated. "If we fail their assessment, they might decide we're a threat that needs to be eliminated." In space, Commander Vorthak reviewed the preliminary data his team had collected. The humans seemed unremarkable in most ways. They were physically weak compared to most species. Their technology was centuries behind galactic standards. Their weapons were simple and crude. "Commander," said his aide, a young Vorthak officer named Kelmar, "I don't understand the war computer's recommendation. These humans appear to be no threat to anyone." Vorthak's scales shifted to a darker green. "I agree. The computer must be malfunctioning. We'll conduct a standard assessment and report our findings to the Council." But as Vorthak studied the data more carefully, he began to notice strange patterns. Human history was filled with wars, but not the simple territorial conflicts that most species engaged in. These wars seemed different, more intense, more complete. He pulled up records of human conflicts from the past century, 2 massive wars that had involved almost their entire planet, weapons of incredible destruction, cities turned to ash, millions of deaths, and yet, the species had not only survived but had grown stronger after each conflict. "Kelmar," he said slowly, "look at this data. These humans fought a war that killed over 50 million of their own kind. Their cities were destroyed. Their economies collapsed. Yes, Commander, a typical primitive species conflict. But look what happened next. Within 50 years, they had rebuilt everything. Their technology advanced more in those 50 years than in the previous 1,000. They went from simple flying machines to spacecraft that could reach other planets." Kelmar studied the data. "That is unusual, sir. Most species take centuries to recover from such devastating wars. These humans seem to use destruction as motivation for advancement." As the assessment team continued their work, more disturbing patterns emerged. Humans didn't just fight wars, they studied them. They analyzed every battle, every strategy, every mistake. They turned warfare into a science. And perhaps most disturbing of all, they never seemed to truly surrender. Even when completely defeated, human resistance movements would continue fighting for years or even decades. Commander Vorthak found himself staring at the war computer's recommendation again. Avoid direct military engagement at all costs. For the first time since beginning the assessment, he wondered if the computer might be right. 3 months after first contact, the galaxy learned something new about humans. It started with the Skarn Empire, a civilization of crystal beings who had conquered 47 worlds in the past century. Their ships were fast, their weapons powerful, and their tactics had never failed. Emperor Chantel of the Skarn looked at the report from the Outer Rim with amusement. "These humans refused our demand for surrender?" "Yes, Your Majesty," replied General Klextar. "We offered them the standard terms: serve the Empire and live, or resist and die. They chose to resist. How many worlds do they control? 17 colonies plus their homeworld. All poorly defended. Their weapons are primitive. This should be over in days." Emperor Chantel's crystal body glowed with satisfaction. "Excellent. Send the Third Fleet, make it quick." On the human colony of New Sol, Colonel Dongwu received the warning from Earth just hours before the Skarn ships appeared in orbit. He was a quiet man with gray hair and tired eyes. But those who knew him understood that his calm manner hid decades of military experience. "How many ships?" he asked his communications officer. 50 vessels, sir. Each one is 3 times the size of our largest cruiser." Colonel Dongwu nodded and activated the colony-wide emergency system. "All civilians to the underground shelters. All military personnel to battle stations." His aide, a young officer named Hansol, looked confused. "Sir, shouldn't we surrender?" "We can't possibly fight 50 ships with our 3 patrol boats." "No," the colonel said simply. "We don't surrender. The first Skarn bombardment destroyed the colony's spaceport and power plant. The second wave targeted government buildings and communication centers. The Skarn expected the humans to send a surrender message after the third wave. Instead, they received return fire from hidden missile batteries that the orbital scans had somehow missed. General Klextar stared at his tactical display in confusion. "Where did those weapons come from?" "Unknown, sir. Our scouts reported no heavy defenses on the planet's surface." "Then how are they shooting at us?" The answer came from an unexpected source. The humans had built their missile batteries inside mountains, using mining equipment to hollow out launch chambers that were invisible from orbit. It was a crude solution, but it worked. "Sir," reported the weapons officer, "we're taking damage. The human missiles are more accurate than expected." "Impossible. Their guidance systems are centuries behind ours." But the humans weren't relying on advanced guidance systems. They were using something the Skarn had never encountered before: human operators who manually guided each missile to its target. It was inefficient and dangerous, but it made the missiles nearly impossible to jam or confuse. On the planet's surface, Colonel Dongwu coordinated the defense from a bunker deep underground. "Target the largest ship," he ordered. "Concentrate all fire. Sir, even if we destroy one ship, they have 49 more. Then we destroy those too, one at a time." Lieutenant Yuna piloted one of the colony's 3 patrol boats in a desperate attack against the Skarn fleet. Her ship was tiny compared to the crystal vessels, but she had studied every piece of data about Skarn technology that Earth had provided. She knew their ships were fast and well armed, but she also knew they relied heavily on automated defense systems that were designed to track and destroy large, predictable targets. Her patrol boat was neither large nor predictable. Yuna dove her ship into the shadow of the largest Skarn vessel, flying so close to its hull that the automated guns couldn't track her without hitting their own ship. She fired her missiles at point-blank range into the engine section. The Skarn ship shuddered and began to drift. 1 down, 49 to go. But the battle that truly confused the Skarn happened on the ground. After 3 days of orbital bombardment, they sent landing parties to capture the surviving humans. They expected to find a broken, defeated population ready to surrender. Instead, they found Colonel Dongwu's ground forces waiting for them. The humans had spent the 3 days of bombardment not cowering in shelters but preparing ambushes. They had moved weapons and supplies through underground tunnels that connected every major building. They had rigged explosives in areas where the Skarn were likely to land. Most disturbing of all, they had organized the civilian population into support networks. Human children carried messages between military units. Human doctors treated wounded soldiers in hidden medical stations. Human engineers worked around the clock to repair damaged equipment. The entire population had become part of the military effort. "This is wrong," General Klextar told his aide as reports came in from the planet's surface. "When we bombard a world, the population should demand that their leaders surrender to stop the suffering. These humans seem to become more determined with each attack. Perhaps they don't understand that they cannot win, sir." "No, that's not it. They know they're outmatched. But they're fighting anyway." The Skarn had a word for this behavior in their language. It roughly translated to madness. After 2 weeks of fighting, the Skarn controlled 3 cities on New Sol. The cost had been enormous. 15 ships destroyed, thousands of casualties, and resources that could have conquered 5 normal worlds. And the humans were still fighting. Emperor Chantel called for a status report. "General, why is this taking so long?" "The humans are different, Your Majesty. They don't fight like other species." "Explain." "Most species fight to achieve specific goals: territory, resources, political control. When those goals become impossible, they surrender to minimize losses. And the humans? They seem to fight for the sake of fighting. Every time we defeat one group, another takes its place. Every time we destroy a weapons cache, they build more weapons from scrap metal and industrial equipment." Emperor Chantel was silent for a long moment. "What about their other colonies?" "Similar results everywhere, Your Majesty. The humans are making us pay for every meter of ground." The Emperor made a decision that would echo through galactic history. "Withdraw the fleet." "Sir?" "You heard me. Withdraw. We'll find easier targets." When the Skarn ships left human space, they carried reports that would soon spread throughout the galaxy. Reports about a species that didn't know how to surrender. About civilians who fought like soldiers and soldiers who fought like demons. About people who seemed to view impossible odds as motivation rather than reason to give up. Dr. Hyejin stood in the ruins of New Sol's capital city, watching the rescue team search for survivors. Colonel Dongwu approached her, his uniform torn and dirty but his eyes still alert. "Doctor," he said, "the xenobiology team wants to examine some Skarn equipment we captured." "Of course. What did we learn about them?" "They're strong fighters when they have advantages, but when the fighting becomes difficult, they look for easier targets." Dr. Hyejin nodded. "And what do you think they learned about us?" Colonel Dongwu looked at the damaged city around them, where human civilians were already beginning to rebuild. "That we don't look for easier targets. The reports from the Skarn invasion reached every major civilization in the galaxy within weeks. Most dismissed them as exaggerations or propaganda. But a few governments began to take notice. The gaseous Netheri collective decided to test human resolve through different means. If the humans were too stubborn to defeat through direct force, perhaps they could be manipulated through more subtle methods. The Netheri had conquered dozens of species using psychological warfare and economic pressure. They were confident that these primitive humans would prove easier to control than the crystal-skinned Skarn. They would soon learn that confidence could be a dangerous thing. The Galactic Council's decision to study humanity came after the third failed attempt to conquer them. The insectoid Zephyrite had tried economic warfare, cutting off trade routes and resources. Like the Skarn and the Netheri before them, they had retreated in confusion when humans simply adapted and found new solutions. Counselor Primtar, a wise old being who had served the Council for over 2 centuries, called the emergency session to order. "We have a problem," he announced to the assembled representatives. 3 separate civilizations have attempted to subdue or eliminate the human species. All 3 have failed. The reptilian Vorthak representative stood up. "Counselor, with respect, the humans are primitives. These failures must be due to poor planning or bad luck." "That's what we thought," Primtar replied, "which is why we need to understand exactly what happened. I'm authorizing a full research project into human behavior patterns and military capabilities." The research team that assembled at Council headquarters was the finest collection of strategic minds in the galaxy. Leading them was Dr. J1, the only human allowed to participate. He was a quiet man with kind eyes who had been studying alien cultures since first contact. "Doctor," said the team leader, "a floating creature called Zephlos. We need you to help us understand your species." "I'll do my best," Dr. J1 replied. "But I should warn you, humans can be difficult to understand even for other humans." The research began with a simple question. Why had 3 advanced civilizations failed to defeat one primitive species? Commander Insu, a human military historian who had been invited to Earth to assist with the research, provided the team with thousands of documents about human conflicts. Battle reports, strategic analyses, first-hand accounts from soldiers and civilians. The alien researchers read with growing bewilderment. "This doesn't make sense," said Dr. Quelnix, a brilliant tactician from the hegemony. "According to these records, humans have been fighting wars for their entire recorded history." "That's correct," Commander Insu confirmed. "But most civilized species stop fighting once they develop advanced technology. War becomes too expensive and destructive. Humans developed their most destructive weapons during their largest wars," Dr. J1 explained. "We tend to innovate faster when we're in danger." Professor Yunji, a behavioral scientist who had joined the team from Earth, added more disturbing information. "Human psychology is built around survival under pressure. We actually perform better when facing extinction than when living in peace." The research team spent months analyzing human military history. What they found challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare. Dr. Quelnix presented his findings to the Council. Most species fight to achieve specific objectives: territory, resources, political control. When those objectives become impossible or too costly, they negotiate or surrender. "And humans?" asked Counselor Primtar. "Humans fight for abstract concepts: freedom, justice, revenge, survival of their culture. These are not objectives that can be negotiated away." The team had discovered something that chilled them to their cores. Humans didn't just fight wars, they fought total wars. When threatened with extinction, they would sacrifice their own cities, their own people, their own civilization rather than surrender. "Show them the Earth records," Commander Insu said quietly. Dr. Quelnix activated a holographic display showing Earth during humanity's greatest war. This conflict lasted 6 years and involved most of their planet. Over 70 million humans died. Entire cities were destroyed. The alien observers watched in horror as the display showed the destruction of human cities, first by conventional weapons, then by weapons that could destroy everything within kilometers of the blast. "They used weapons of mass destruction against each other," gasped Counselor Velneth from the Peaceful Harmony Coalition. "Multiple times," Dr. J1 confirmed. "And then we rebuilt stronger than before." Professor Yunji added more data. "Human resistance movements have a 78% success rate over extended periods. We have never been completely conquered. Occupied, yes. Controlled temporarily, yes, but never fully defeated." "That's impossible," said the Vorthak representative. "Every species can be defeated with sufficient force." "Can they?" asked Dr. J1. What happens when you defeat a human army? They surrender and accept terms. Some do. Others retreat and form resistance groups. They hide in forests, mountains, cities. They attack supply lines, assassinate collaborators, gather intelligence, and wait for opportunities to strike back. Commander Insu pulled up more records. During our Great War, one group of humans held out in a surrounded city for 900 days. No supplies, no reinforcements, no hope of rescue. They ate rats and tree bark. They died by the thousands from starvation and disease. And then they surrendered? No. They fought until the siege was broken by forces from outside. The research team found pattern after pattern that defied galactic norms. Humans who fought impossible battles just to delay enemy advance. Humans who destroyed their own resources rather than let enemies capture them. Humans who continued fighting even when their governments had officially surrendered. Look at this, said Dr. Quelnix, highlighting a section of data. After the Skarn bombardment of New Sol, human productivity on other worlds increased by 30%. They didn't become discouraged by the attack, they became motivated. Motivated to do what? To build more weapons, train more soldiers, and develop new defensive strategies. Professor Unji presented her psychological analysis. Most species have a point where self-preservation instinct overrides loyalty to group or cause. For humans, that point seems to be when the species itself is threatened. Individual humans will die to protect their families. Families will sacrifice themselves to protect their communities. Communities will fight to extinction to protect their species. The most disturbing discovery came when they analyzed human technological development. Humans advanced fastest during periods of conflict and crisis. Peace actually slowed their progress. They turned suffering into strength, Dr. Quelnix said in his final report. Defeat becomes motivation for improvement. Loss becomes fuel for innovation. They study their failures more carefully than their victories. Counselor Primtar read the research summary with growing alarm. Are you telling me that attacking humans makes them stronger? Not immediately, Dr. J1 replied. But over time, yes. Each conflict teaches us something new. Each enemy shows us our weaknesses. Each defeat forces us to adapt. What about total annihilation? Destroy their worlds completely? The room fell silent. Finally, Commander Insu spoke. Counselor, we've studied that possibility. Based on our history and psychology, we believe that an attack intended to exterminate humanity would trigger something we call total warfare. Explain. All rules, all limitations, all moral constraints would be abandoned. Every human, civilian, and military would become part of the war effort. Every resource would be turned to weapon production. Every scientific mind would focus on developing more effective ways to kill enemies. Professor Yunji added quietly. And we would not stop fighting until either humanity was extinct or our attackers were extinct. There would be no middle ground. The implications sank in around the chamber. A species that grew stronger through conflict. A species that refused to surrender. A species that would choose mutual destruction over defeat. Counselor Primtar looked at the assembled researchers. In your professional opinion, what would be the result of a major galactic power attempting to eliminate humanity? Dr. Quelnix answered for them all. Eventually, the humans would win. They might lose 90% of their population. Their worlds might be burned to ash, but whatever survived would rebuild, adapt, and hunt down their enemies until every last one was dead. That's impossible. Dr. J1 stood up slowly. Counselor, may I share something from human philosophy? Please. We have a saying, when you strike at a king, you must kill him. The meaning is that if you attack someone powerful, you must be certain you can destroy them completely. Because if they survive, they will never stop coming for you. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Humanity, Dr. J1 continued, considers itself the king of its own fate. The Galactic Council's war computers had never been asked to run this type of simulation before. The most advanced strategic systems in the galaxy, machines that could predict the outcome of conflicts between entire civilizations, were now focused on a single question. What would happen if the major galactic powers went to war with humanity? Fleet Admiral Chang Min stood in the Council's simulation chamber, watching as holographic displays showed the positions of ships, planets, and resources across thousands of light years. He was there as a human consultant, though many in the Council questioned the wisdom of letting a potential enemy observe their most advanced strategic planning. Admiral, said Director Kothral, The Council's chief strategist. We want to run several scenarios. In each one, humanity is attacked by a different major power. I understand. We need you to provide accurate data about human defensive capabilities and strategic thinking. Admiral Changmin nodded. I'll answer your questions truthfully, but I should warn you, human military strategy can be difficult for other species to understand. The first simulation began. The hegemony, the galaxy's largest military power, launched a full-scale invasion of human space. On paper, the outcome was obvious. The hegemony had 10,000 warships, each one larger and more advanced than anything humanity possessed. They controlled 300 worlds and had resources beyond counting. The simulation showed the expected result. Complete human defeat within 18 months. Now run the long-term projection. Director Kothral commanded. The simulation continued. The holographic display showed the years following the hegemony's victory. At first, everything proceeded normally. The hegemony occupied human worlds, established governance, and began extracting resources. Then strange things began to happen. Hegemony supply convoys started disappearing. Mining operations suffered mysterious accidents. Administrative centers experienced power failures and communication breakdowns. The occupied human population seemed passive and cooperative, but somehow resistance activities continued to increase. What's causing these disruptions? Asked General Mi Young, another human advisor who had been invited to observe. The simulation is modeling human resistance movements based on historical patterns, Director Kothral explained. Even after military defeat, human populations continue organized opposition. For how long? According to the projections, indefinitely. The simulation showed that maintaining control over human worlds required more and more hegemony resources. Occupation forces had to be constantly reinforced. Industrial facilities needed heavy security. Transportation routes required military escorts. After 50 years of occupation, the hegemony was spending 30% of its military budget just to control human territory that produced only 8% of their resources. Run the next phase, Admiral Changmin said quietly. The simulation advanced another 50 years. The display showed something that made the alien observers uncomfortable. Human resistance groups had somehow acquired advanced technology, weapons that should have been impossible for them to build, ships that could challenge hegemony patrols. How did they develop this technology? Asked Counselor Nemtar. They studied captured hegemony equipment, General Mi Young explained. Humans are very good at reverse engineering, but this shows them building ships superior to current hegemony designs. That's correct. 100 years of studying hegemony technology would give humans significant advantages. We learn from our enemies. The simulation continued to its conclusion. After 3 centuries of occupation, the hegemony faced a choice. Commit even more resources to controlling increasingly sophisticated human resistance, or abandon their conquest entirely. The computer calculated that continued occupation would eventually bankrupt the hegemony's military capabilities. This can't be accurate, protested Counselor Velneth. The hegemony has conquered dozens of species. None have required centuries of occupation. Captain Wu Jin, a human special forces operative who had been studying alien tactics, spoke up. Most species surrender completely when their military is defeated. Humans don't have a concept of complete surrender. Explain. When human governments surrender, individual humans don't consider themselves bound by that surrender. Resistance continues at the personal level. Director Kothral ran additional simulations using different attacking forces. The Crystalline Dominion, the Void Hunters, the Mechanical Consortium. Each simulation showed the same pattern: initial victory followed by endless, increasingly expensive occupation. But the most disturbing simulation came when they modeled an attempted genocide, complete extermination, of humanity rather than conquest. The results were unprecedented. Show me that projection again, Admiral Changmin said, his voice carefully controlled. The display showed the genocide simulation. A coalition of 5 major powers had combined their fleets to eliminate humanity entirely. Every human world was bombarded until nothing could survive. The attack was swift, thorough, and initially successful. 97% of humanity died in the first phase of the assault, but 3% survived. Small groups on remote colonies, hidden research stations, exploration ships that were too far away to be caught in the initial attack. According to the simulation, these survivors numbered about 200,000 individuals scattered across dozens of systems. Now watch what happens next, Captain Wu Jin said grimly. The surviving humans didn't try to rebuild their civilization. They didn't attempt to negotiate peace. They didn't even try to hide. They began hunting. The computer showed small human ships attacking alien outposts, research stations, and isolated colonies. The attacks were suicide missions. The human ships were too small to survive engagement with major warships. But they didn't need to survive. They only needed to kill enemies. They're learning, General Mi Young observed. Each attack teaches them more about alien technology and tactics. The simulation showed the human survivors becoming more sophisticated over time. They captured alien ships, studied alien weapons, recruited alien dissidents and criminals to their cause. Within 50 years, they had grown from scattered refugees to a significant military threat. Within a century, they had built a fleet capable of challenging major powers. This is impossible, declared Counselor Primtar. 200,000 survivors cannot threaten civilizations with populations in the trillions. They can if they don't care about their own survival, Admiral Chang Min replied. The simulation assumes that humans who survive genocide will be motivated by one thing only: revenge. Surely they would want to rebuild their species. Captain Wu Jin shook his head. Not until their enemies are dead. All of them. The simulation's final phase showed something that terrified the alien observers. The surviving humans had not only rebuilt their military capability, they had surpassed it. Centuries of studying alien technology while being motivated by absolute hatred had created weapons and tactics beyond anything the galaxy had seen. One by one, the civilizations that had participated in the genocide began to fall, not conquered, exterminated. The humans showed no interest in ruling alien worlds or enslaving alien populations. They simply killed everything they encountered. The projection shows complete extermination of all 5 attacking civilizations, Director Kothral said in a shaking voice. Every world, every ship, every individual. And then what? Asked Counselor Nemtar. The simulation showed its final prediction. After eliminating their enemies, the surviving humans would begin rebuilding their own species. But they would also continue expanding, spreading across the galaxy with one simple goal: ensure that no other species could ever threaten humanity again. The galaxy would be divided into 2 types of worlds: human worlds and dead worlds. This is just a computer simulation, Counselor Velneth protested. It's not real. The computer bases its projections on observed behavioral patterns, Director Kothral explained. Human psychological profiles indicate an unusual capacity for sustained motivation by negative emotions. Admiral Changmin stood up slowly. Counselors, you asked me to provide accurate information about human strategic thinking. Here it is. We have a concept called mutually assured destruction. It means that if someone tries to destroy us completely, we will destroy them completely in return, even if it costs us everything. That's madness. Perhaps. But it's effective madness. No rational enemy would choose mutual destruction over negotiated peace. General Mi Young added, the simulation shows what happens when someone attacks an irrational enemy. Rational civilizations calculate costs and benefits. Humans in survival mode don't calculate anything except how to kill their enemies. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The galaxy's most advanced strategic computers had reached a unanimous conclusion. Attacking humanity would cost more than any possible benefit, and attempting to exterminate humanity would result in the attacker's own extinction. Director Kothral turned off the simulation displays. I'll prepare a report for the full council. What will you recommend? Asked Admiral Chang Min. That humanity be offered full membership in the Galactic Council immediately. And if the council asks why? Director Kothral looked at the empty displays where the simulations had played out. Because the alternative is unthinkable. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest gathering in the organization's history. Representatives from every major civilization had come to hear the final report on humanity. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as delegates took their seats. Counselor Primtar called the session to order. We are here to vote on the human question. Director Kothral will present the findings of our research team. Director Kothral rose slowly. His usual confidence seemed shaken. Counselors, after extensive study, our conclusion is unanimous. Humanity must be offered immediate membership in the Galactic Council with full rights and privileges. A murmur ran through the chamber. The Vorthak representative stood up. Director, surely you're not suggesting these primitives deserve equal status with civilizations that have existed for millennia? I'm suggesting that denying them equal status could result in the extinction of our civilizations. The chamber fell silent. Please explain, said Counselor. Primtar. Director Cothrell activated the main display. Humans are not like other species we have encountered. They are apex persistence predators, evolved to hunt prey by pursuing it until it dies of exhaustion. This trait extends to warfare. The display showed comparison charts between human conflicts and those of other species. Most civilizations fight until they achieve their objectives or until the cost becomes unacceptable. Humans fight until their enemies no longer exist. Ambassador Taemin sat in the observer section, watching the proceedings with interest. He had been invited to witness the vote, though he was not yet allowed to participate. Beside him sat Director Sung Ho, who would head the new Human Galactic Relations Department if the vote passed. Look at these psychological profiles, Director Cothrell continued. When threatened with extinction, most species seek compromise or surrender to preserve their population. Humans seek total victory or mutual destruction. He switched to tactical analyses. Our war games show that any military engagement with humanity results in one of two outcomes: Pyrrhic victory followed by centuries of expensive occupation, or complete extermination of the attacking species. The Crystalline Dominion's representative spoke up. Director, you're describing a species of genocidal maniacs. Why would we want them in the Council? Because the alternative is making them our enemies. Director Sung Ho leaned over to Ambassador Taemin. Are they accurate about human psychology? Taemin considered the question carefully. Mostly, yes. We don't like being threatened. And if the Council rejects membership, then we continue developing on our own. Eventually, we'll be strong enough to demand membership rather than wait for an invitation. On the Council floor, Director Cothrell was presenting the most disturbing findings. Our xenopsychologists have identified humanity as the galaxy's first encounter with apex persistence predators. They don't just defeat enemies, they eliminate them entirely. Surely you're exaggerating, said the representative from the Harmony Coalition. I wish I were. Let me share some examples from human history. The display showed records of human conflicts that had ended not with peace treaties, but with the complete destruction of one side. Humans have repeatedly demonstrated the ability to pursue enemies across continents and decades. They treat warfare not as a political tool but as a species survival mechanism. Counselor Velneth raised a tentacle. What about their internal conflicts? Don't humans fight among themselves? They do. But when threatened by external enemies, they demonstrate unprecedented unity. Our models show that an alien attack would unite humanity faster than any other possible event. The presentation continued with economic and technological analyses. Humans advanced faster during crises. They adapted to new challenges more quickly than any known species. Most disturbing, they showed no upper limit to their willingness to sacrifice for long-term victory. In summary, Director Cothrell concluded, attacking humanity is tactically inadvisable, strategically catastrophic, and ultimately suicidal for any civilization that attempts it. The chamber erupted in debate. Representatives argued over the implications, the accuracy of the data, and the precedent of admitting a species based on fear rather than achievement. President Ji-hai watched the proceedings from the human diplomatic section. She was a calm woman with steel in her eyes, someone who had led Earth through the first alien contacts and the subsequent conflicts. What do you think they'll decide? She asked Ambassador Taemin. They'll vote for membership, he replied. They're scared. Of us? Of what we represent. Most species reach a point where they stop evolving, stop adapting, stop growing. They become comfortable and predictable. We haven't reached that point yet. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives argued for immediate membership. Others wanted restrictions and monitoring. A few suggested that humanity should be quarantined rather than integrated. It was the Vorthak representative who finally asked the crucial question. Director Cothrell, what happens if we vote against membership? Unknown. But our behavioral models suggest that humans would interpret rejection as a hostile act. And then, they would prepare for war against the entire galaxy. The voting began at sunset. One by one, each civilization cast their decision. The process was slow and formal, but the outcome became clear early on. Fear was a powerful motivator. When the final vote was tallied, the result was overwhelming. 847 in favor of membership, 23 against, 31 abstentions. Councillor Primtar rose to announce the result. By a decisive majority, the Galactic Council offers full membership to the human species, with all rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereof. Ambassador Tae-min stood and walked to the speaker's podium. The chamber fell silent as he prepared to give humanity's response. Councillors, he began, on behalf of all humanity, I accept your generous offer of membership in the Galactic Council. Polite applause rippled through the chamber. We look forward to peaceful cooperation with all member species. We hope to contribute to galactic prosperity and security. More applause, slightly more genuine this time. We also look forward to making new friends. Taemin paused, his expression becoming slightly less diplomatic. And learning about our mutual enemies. The applause died away. Every delegate in the chamber was thinking the same thing. What have we done? After the session, small groups of representatives gathered in private meetings. The conversations were remarkably similar across species lines. At least now they're pointed away from us, the hegemony delegate told his staff. We should make sure they know who our enemies are, suggested the Crystalline Dominion representative. Perhaps we can arrange for human military advisors, mused the Void Hunter ambassador. In the human diplomatic quarters, President Ji-hai met with her senior staff to plan the integration process. What's our first priority? Asked Director Sung-ho. Learn everything we can about galactic technology, politics, and military capabilities, President Ji-hai replied. Knowledge is power. And our second priority? Ambassador Taemin smiled slightly. Identify potential threats to humanity. Are we expecting trouble? We're humans, the ambassador replied. We always expect trouble. 6 months later, the galaxy had settled into a new equilibrium. Humanity's integration into the council proceeded smoothly. Human diplomats were polite and cooperative. Human scientists shared their research freely. Human merchants established trade relationships across known space. But alien intelligence services noticed some disturbing patterns. Humans seemed unusually interested in military technologies and defensive strategies. They asked detailed questions about historical conflicts and territorial disputes. They studied every species' strengths and weaknesses with the thoroughness of people preparing for war. Most concerning, humans had begun establishing what they called cultural exchange programs. Small human communities on dozens of alien worlds. Officially, these were for diplomatic and educational purposes. But intelligence analysts noted that many of these communities were located near strategic resources or transportation hubs. And many of the cultural ambassadors had military backgrounds. The galaxy had gained a new member species. But late at night, in the private chambers of government leaders across known space, the same question was whispered. Had they gained an ally? Or had they simply invited the apex predators inside their defenses? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. The galaxy would never be the same. As Ambassador Taemin had said during the acceptance ceremony, humanity was honored to join the galactic community. They were looking forward to making new friends, and they were very interested in learning about their mutual enemies. The real reason nobody wanted to battle humanity wasn't because they couldn't be defeated. It was because victory against humans wasn't actually possible. Other species fought until they achieved their objectives. Humans fought until their enemies no longer existed. The galaxy had learned this lesson through 3 failed attempts at conquest and countless strategic simulations. Now they would live with the consequences of that knowledge.